Okay, I'm not even sure if this is working. I'm just gonna talk. I'm gonna watch a video, but I'm gonna talk while doing this. I'm gonna play hardcore and try to beat the game, I guess.
Right now, Albany, Georgia Police Department is all hands on deck trying to locate them. So I need to put this on your radar in order to keep you safe. A few days ago, they made this public post after failing to locate this demon. And they even say that even just his image is enough to curse you, where he crawls through your computer screen and steals $30 straight from your wallet. He is reportedly an elderly gentleman and a suspect in a very serious investigation at the Albany, Georgia Police Department. It occurred at a Walmart where an individual dropped $30 on the ground while shopping, and this heartless monster swooped in and moments later picked up the money, pocketed it, and didn't turn it into the Walmart employees. So now they're doing a public blast, hoping that some good Samaritans and even Batman out there will chime in, chirp up, and reveal who this evil villain is, so he can be brought to justice for taking that $30, a little finders keepers. And so far it's been radio silence. No one recognizes the man of mystery here, John Doe.
Hold on,
but I have to imagine this wasn't his first rodeo, his first bout of crime, taking $30 that he found on the floor. Soulless, unthinkable, heinous, evil. It makes me sick to my stomach. And no one has piped up here to say who it is. How deep does the rabbit hole
I have to reset it.
How many people are afraid of this man? And
it's nighttime. Shit.
Out of fear for
Why did I do that?
life.
I have school like tomorrow, or the day after.
But don't worry, even if no one reports who this is to the Albany, Georgia Police Department, I'm sure they'll just use flock cameras to find him. No doubt about that. That's what they're there for. Perpetual surveillance, baby. You think you're going to find $30 on the ground and Big Brother isn't going to know about it and track your ass down? So I imagine it'll just be a matter of time before he's in cuffs for this. Justice is right around the corner. They'll get to it once they're done stalking their exes through the flock camera surveillance, as well as just incorrectly labeling innocent people as criminals based on false flags in the system. Once they're through with that, they'll get to the big potatoes, like this old man who found $30 on the ground and picked it up. So that's good. It's something to celebrate. I'll drop the sarcasm for a moment. This is fucking outrageous. They actually just blasted this man's photo publicly like he's a goddamn terrorist or something because he picked up $30 he found on the floor of a Walmart, which they're coming after him with the hammer as a theft case under Georgia Code 1686. Keeping property you know or learn is lost or mislaid without making reasonable efforts to return it to the owner is considered the criminal offense of theft of lost or mislaid property. So there's no finders keepers or anything like that. So basically, if you see money on the ground, avoid it at all costs. It's got the cheese touch. You got to treat it like it's a dead body. You don't want to contaminate the crime scene. Otherwise, you're about to get in big trouble. Because it's such a fucking nuisance in that case. They start making reasonable efforts to return it to the owner. Who knows how long it's been there? Could be days or even weeks. The person that dropped it could not even be there. Could be someone that just lies to come take it. You have no way of knowing. So now all of a sudden it becomes a tedious chore, a big headache. What are you supposed to do? You sit there hooting and hollering? My fellow shoppers, there is $30 at my location. If you are missing it, please approach me post haste. It's $30. Like if this was a whole wallet or something, that makes so much more sense. Or like an actual big sum of money, someone just dropped like fucking $1,000 on the floor for some reason, like it's GTA, and they just, I don't know, I guess tripped and fell and then their loot spilled out. Like that would make
love
sense.
this thing. The day bloom stuff. That shit is so good.
Why are you making it such a huge deal? So the expectation was he finds $30 on the floor and then fucking sprints to the nearest Walmart employee screaming,
let's hide inside.
Help! I found $30! Oh my god, it's not mine! Take it! We have to find who this belongs to. Like, they're supposed to blast it over like the main speakers. Attention, Walmart shoppers! Emergency! $30!
That's crazy.
$30, please report to the front ASAP. And fucking red alert, sirens blaring. But this guy, he didn't go through the proper protocol. Instead, he found that $30 and said, "Oh, okay," and then picked it up. The most normal shit ever. And now they've got his photo plastered here, and he's a suspect in their investigation over a $30 picked up from Walmart floor case that they're, I guess, diverting legitimate police resources to. That's fucking pathetic. That's embarrassing. And they are getting clowned on for it, as they should. This is despicable, man.
Let's
What
get
a
our furnace
bleak
going.
picture this paints. Where you could just be
That's
cruising
a
along and you
fuckload of
find a
copper.
little bit of money on the floor and you just pick it up and put it in your pocket. Something I think every person, every human being has done at some point. And now, all of a sudden, they'll catch you on the surveillance camera in Walmart and be like, all right, we got to get this guy. And he just broke the law big time. All right, let's track him down. Let's also publicly post this photo like the criminal he is and see if anyone will turn him in. If not, well, we're going to have to get creative. They're going turbo mode on this guy. They said, this geezer's going to get it. We're going to punish him for picking up that 30 clams. Like, shit, man. Actual dangerous criminals they won't even do this for sometimes. Like, one they have about a lot of stalkers. For some reason, authorities have a really hard time taking stalking cases seriously until something tragic happens. So you'll always see, like, these reports where a victim is constantly going to
we are out of
about,
ammo.
like, this dangerous stalker who's showing up to their house, threatening them, doing
All
all these
right,
kind of things.
well,
good luck. I guess if he does it again, give us a call. Or if he gets stabbed or if he hurts you, then we'll swoop in. Like, you don't see them posting their fucking photo or asking for help and identifying them or bringing them to justice. You see an old guy pick up $30 on a Walmart floor, and then all of a sudden you got officers scooting inside where he's like, oh, we gotta get a posted photo. But I can't help but giggle at the thought process of them just blasting his photo out there, urging the community to try and, like, turn him in or snitch on him. If anyone does, they're a bitch. They need to be arrested for just being an irredeemable tweet, just this, like,
oh shit! Oh!
This guy, because you recognize him and you are so distraught that he took $30 that he found on a Walmart floor. Like, I don't see who would ever do that. That's a waste of your time.
Holy fuck,
it's not like
dude.
they're offering a reward. It's not like you're gonna get $30 if you turn him in. Like, you're not making the community safer by having this guy, like, arrested over it. It's so fucking stupid. It's an outrageous thing to even
That was scary.
So shamelessly here. Like, I would never consider that stealing. Him just happening to find $30. And let's say, let's just play ball with this. Let's say he did do the proper procedure and go to the Walmart employees. How are they going to verify that that $30 is going to...
Okay. Well, I have no more ammo. This is a bummer. Okay. There we go. There we go. Come on.
I've been a canine handler for almost 9 years. My partner is a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Rex. He's trained in tracking and narcotics detection, and he's solid. He doesn't spook easily. I've taken him into warehouses, abandoned houses, woods at night, and he's always steady. That's why what happened that night stuck with me. We were called in to assist patrol on a house search after a foot pursuit in the area. Officers had attempted to stop a male suspect a few blocks away, and he ran. They chased him through backyards and lost sight of him near this property. A side gate to the yard was found open, and the back door of the house was unlocked. Neighbors had also reported hearing a struggle in the backyard, which added to the urgency. Patrol swept the first floor, but weren't comfortable calling it safe. They believe the suspect may have forced his way inside and could still be hiding somewhere in the house. Rex and I arrived about 20 minutes later. The house was a 2-story place in a quiet subdivision. There were no signs of forced entry from the front. The officers on the scene briefed me quickly. Long story short, they told me there were no obvious signs of struggle, just the open access at the rear of the house and the fact that the suspect had vanished within yards of it. I put Rex on a short leash and gave him the search command. He pulled forward immediately, moving from room to room on the first floor. The living room was clear, kitchen was clear, and laundry room was clear, so we moved upstairs. Up there was a narrow hallway with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. There was no fresh air up there and no drafts. All the windows seemed to be closed. As to be expected, as the neighbor reported that the owners of this house were not in town. Rex and I went into the first bedroom, then the second bedroom. Then he pulled toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. I examined the little bathroom, and overall it seemed clean. Nothing was out of place in any of the rooms. Rex sniffed around the room, the edge of the vanity, the floor, then he froze. His ears went forward, and his body stiffened up. He started growling, looking outside the bathroom door. His growls then turned to barks. He was staring out into the hallway, growling and barking at something up there. I stepped backwards out of the bathroom with him. "What is it?" I said quietly. Rex was locked onto something down the hallway. At the very end, near the last bedroom door, I saw what he was barking at. This figure standing there.
Bro.
This tall, dark, completely still
It's not regenerating.
figure, and it didn't look like any of the officers downstairs. They also would have in some way announced their presence to me. I identified myself as police, and that there was a canine with me, but there was no response to this. Then I just flat out asked, "Who is that?" Still no response. Rex was pulling in the opposite direction, something I'd never seen him do before. He didn't want to go down the hall. Then the figure turned and walked into the bedroom at the end of the hall. I knew
We were
every
racking up the
officer
money.
on scene. I knew where they were positioned. None of them were upstairs with me. Rex planted his feet when I tried to move forward. He pulled backwards hard. He did not want to go down that hallway.
What was that?
I drew my weapon and said
What was
over
that?
the radio that I had possibly located the suspect at the end bedroom. Start making your way up. I pulled Rex forward, and he resisted the entire way.
Okay.
He kept looking at me like he didn't understand why I was making him go.
Weird.
When we reached the bedroom doorway, he refused to cross with me. I stepped into the room first with my gun raised, but it was empty. Like completely empty. Just a bed against the wall and a dresser across from it. I waited for the others to get up there before fully entering the room. And when we finally entered, there was no one standing in there or hiding under the bed. The window was closed and even the closet was empty.
Okay.
There was no kind of attic hatch or crawl space door. Rex stayed in the hallway.
There we go.
He wouldn't step foot into the room. I
Alright, we need
expected
some
the
more
others
wood.
to doubt me, but they saw Rex and the way he was acting. One of them tried coaxing him into the room. He refused. We searched every inch of that bedroom. We checked the walls for false panels. We checked the bathroom again. We checked the other.
Okay.
Not a
Let's
single trapdoor anywhere.
make
If it weren't
some
for
more.
Rex, I feel like I'd have gone crazy. After about 20 minutes, I told the others I had to take Rex out of there. But before we left, he kept glancing back down the hall at that bedroom. As soon as we stepped outside into the night air, he relaxed slightly. When he was in his crate, he curled up immediately, but he didn't look at me the way he usually does after a search. Patrol wrapped up not long after. I replayed that moment 1,000 times in my head. I think I believe it was a real person, the suspect even, but I don't know how they escaped that.
Okay. That was
Or
scary.
why Rex was that way. Maybe more
Okay.
suspicious people than me will say what Rex and I saw was a ghost.
Alrighty.
Rex has never reacted like that
What the
before or
fuck?
since. He's tracked armed suspects without hesitation and entered a lot more stressful environments than that house. But that room, he wouldn't step inside. I trust that dog more than I trust my own instincts. Just about everyone in my department has at least one unexplainable night call, and this one was mine.
Elevate your engine with Mizumo Auto. Discover our premium cylinder head gasket sets engine.
It was not enough.
Seals and maximum reliability. Ensure peak performance with Mizumo Auto.
Okay.
When I turned 21, I joined the police force in a remote town that I won't name. The department needed new officers, and I was a young father who needed money, so the timing was perfect. Because I was a rookie, they assigned me to the night shift. It ran from 6 at night to 6 in the morning. The guys at the station sometimes teased me about my hours, saying that I always worked the crummiest shifts. I actually didn't mind them. I've always been a night owl. Besides busting people for speeding and pulling over the occasional drunk driver, I spent most nights sitting back listening to podcasts. In a weird way, it was kind of relaxing. After a year in the department, something happened one night that changed everything. A severe thunderstorm rolled into town and caused major power outages. Torrential downpour flooded most of the major roads. To be in the
Dude,
best
this
position
staff is
possible
sick.
when accident reports landlords came in. I parked my cruiser in a parking lot in the middle of town. At 2 a.m., our dispatcher Claire radioed in. She reported that someone who sounded like an adult male claimed to have been kidnapped. They told her they were held captive inside someone's home. Then the call ended. When she redialed, the caller didn't answer. My cruiser had a built-in computer display that showed all the call details. Based on the address, I was about 10 minutes away, so I was probably the closest officer. I radioed in and told her I'd respond. I also requested backup. Another new officer named Chris chimed in and said he'd be on location in 5. Claire clicked on
Let's
her
go,
radio
Chris.
and hesitated for a few seconds over the static. Then she said the caller sounded like they were altering their voice in some way, possibly through digital means to make themselves sound like a child.
What the fuck?
She used the specific phrase, like a young girl. She concluded that officers should proceed with extreme caution.
Weird.
All of us were pretty close at the station, so we felt nervous for one another during high-risk cases like this. I radioed back and said 10-4, then drove off to the scene.
10-4.
When I turned into the neighborhood,
I don't know what that
we
means.
saw that every
Alright, I
single
need...
street lamp was out. The entire
Ooh,
block
apple.
had lost power. That meant we would have low visibility into the home we were investigating,
Okay.
which put us in greater danger. I followed my GPS to the end of the street where the house was, and I saw that Chris had already beaten me. His cruiser was idling in front of the house. I pulled up next to him and rolled down my window.
Pinky's up there.
Chris commented on the home's poor condition. I glanced ahead, taking it in for myself. The grass was knee-high. Overgrown bushes blocked out the windows. The roof was dented in several areas and had a ton of missing shingles. It looked completely abandoned. This sent off alarm bells in my head. You can gather a lot about someone's mental state by how they treat their living space. I told Chris I'd take the lead. We both stepped out of our cruisers into the pouring rain.
Hold on, let me make an escape route in case I fuck up.
Waterlogged path up to the door. Chris clicked on his flashlight. Whenever a second officer like Chris is present during an investigation, their entire job is to protect the leading officer by monitoring the suspect's body language.
Okay.
If the suspect makes a move on the cop that's interrogating them, they neutralize the threat. Chris made the perfect backup because he was both observant and calm under pressure. This allowed me to focus solely on the suspect's story and if I was hearing the truth.
God.
When we reached the door, I rang the bell. Then we stood there, listening for movement inside.
Jesus.
After a few seconds, footsteps shuffled up to the door. Then they paused. Whoever was on the other side was completely still, just waiting. A feeling came over me that we were being watched. Slowly,
This is so
my
scary.
gaze drifted over to the peephole. As soon as I made eye contact, a distorted shape moved back.
Oh my God.
Whoever was watching us had pulled their head away. If you're in there, we'd like to ask you a few questions.
Oh God.
I said. They froze again, as if they were thinking about what to do next. Then the lock started turning and the door creaked open, but only by a foot. From the darkness, a man peeked out of the crack.
Oh
He
shit.
looked like he was in his early 30s.
Okay.
He was overweight, balding, and
That's
wore
scary.
thick-rimmed glasses.
I guess there's a jungle over there.
His eyes and sensed that he was hiding something. I informed him that we'd received a call from his address of someone claiming to have been kidnapped. The man acted confused. He apologized and told us it must have been a pocket dial. I asked him if it was a pocket dial, then how could he explain the voice in the phone call? For a split second, the man averted his gaze, then said he didn't know anything about a voice. I asked him if there was anyone else in the house, and he said he lived alone. Then I told him that for safety reasons, we needed to have a look inside. Not without a warrant, he said. These days, a warrant can be obtained in minutes. I went back to my cruiser, called dispatch, and requested communication with the on-call magistrate. 5 minutes later, Claire came back on the radio and told me the judge approved a telephonic warrant and emailed it. We were clear to enter. I showed the warrant to the man. He reluctantly pulled the door open, and I could see that his hands were visibly shaking. I clicked on my own flashlight and stepped inside. A putrid smell immediately hit me. I scanned around to find the source and saw a hallway straight ahead and a room directly to my right. I shined my light into the room and saw what looked like a living room. It was absolutely disgusting. Piles of clothes and stacks of dirty dishes were spread across the carpet. Cockroaches were even crawling all over them. A couch that looked like it was pulled off the side of the road sat at an angle against the wall. This man obviously used this room as his living space. I'd seen these sorts of living conditions in drug cases before. When I turned to look back at the man, he shifted uncomfortably. I made a mental note to check for paraphernalia once I'd confirmed the house was safe. Then I stepped toward the hallway. My foot struck something. I looked down.
Oh.
With the beam of my flashlight, I saw a pink Barbie doll playhouse that I knew I'd seen before. I thought about it and realized I'd bought this exact set for my daughter last year on Christmas. I asked the man if he had kids. He said no, but explained to us that sometimes his nieces came over, so he kept a few toys around for them. Chris and I exchanged a look. No mother in their right mind would allow children into this environment. I told him this was his last chance to tell me if anyone else was in the house. He assured me there wasn't. I started my way down the hallway. The man followed, saying that nothing was down there. Chris yanked him back by his arm and ordered him to stay put. The hallway had an open room on either side and a closed door at the end, which was probably the basement. I peeked inside the first room, scanning from right to left, and saw more children's toys and even items like diapers scattered across the floor.
Oh my god, yes.
In the corner, the dark shape of a person was hunched over. I drew my weapon, only to realize that it was a doll sagging its head down in a rocking chair. The shock of that visual made my heart pound. I leaned against the door frame and steadied my breathing. Chris asked me what I had seen. Before I could respond, I started studying the doll. It was the largest one I'd ever seen, every bit as big as a person, and the man had dressed it in women's clothing. On the bed beside it, ladies' blouses, jeans, and lingerie were folded into neat piles. Each pile was separated by color. Meanwhile, the rest of the house was a pigsty. What was happening in this room felt wrong on many different levels.
I am getting a lot of good gear.
I moved further down the hall and glanced into the second bedroom. This one was empty. I reached the final door at the end of the hall when from behind me, the man called and asked if I'd like to see the upstairs instead. I told him yes, but first I was going to see the basement.
Don't trust
that.
that.
Said again that there was nothing down there. I heard Chris tell the man to stay still, which meant he was probably trying to follow me down the hall. The closer I moved into this part of the house, the more agitated he became. I reached for the handle.
We got a lot of good stuff.
And pushed the door open.
Let's get ourselves
on its own hinges.
some cactus
gear.
gear.
Steps descended into a pitch black room. I shined my light down. I could only see the area that surrounded the landing. It looked equally as messy as the upstairs.
Now,
from deep inside the room, in an area I couldn't see, something rattled. I told Chris that I heard movement. The man responded instead, apologizing to me and Chris over and over. Even though it was the last thing I wanted to do, I had no choice. The man was lying to us. Someone was down there. I headed down the staircase. Each step creaked under my weight. The rattling noise from inside the room grew louder. Behind me, the man repeatedly begged us to stop looking around. I neared the landing and swept my flashlight across stacks of boxes. No one appeared in my line of sight. Across the room, there was another door. The noise was coming from there. I drew my weapon. I commanded whoever was inside to come out slowly with their hands up. Whoever was inside stopped moving. I shouted the same command a second time.
I want some sand.
Shut. I crossed the room, sliding between boxes and old furniture that blocked the way. My sights were trained on the door. When I stood within several feet, I paused, listening. Whoever was inside also remained perfectly still. My anxiety ticked up with each second. So many things could go wrong in this situation. I moved to the side of the door frame in case they were armed and tried to fire through the door. I reached for the knob, grabbed on, and twisted. Then I swung the door open. I was still hidden to the side of the frame. If anything besides empty hands emerged, I would have to use deadly force.
Sweet.
After several agonizing moments, nothing came.
Let's
I said a quick prayer and aimed my weapon right into the
room.
What I saw, I can't go into detail on, but basically, this is what happened. A man in his mid-40s was being held captive in that basement. He was a father of 3 and a respected member of the community. Months after he went missing, everyone, including his family, assumed he was dead. After 2 years in captivity, he finally got the chance to escape. Earlier in the night, before we arrived, the homeowner brought the victim's dinner down and made the mistake of leaving his phone behind. The victim managed to activate Siri and call 911. When we arrived on scene, the victim had already been confined in a way that prevented him from calling upstairs or making any kind of substantial noise. Then, when I ordered him to come out, he froze in fear, not because he couldn't obey my command, but because he didn't want me to use lethal force, thinking that he was a threat. Once I opened the door and found him, we arrested the homeowner on the spot and took the victim to the hospital for immediate treatment. I feel incredibly lucky that no one was harmed, and that we could reunite this man with his family.
Okay.
The most
We got
disturbing detail, which has haunted me every day since, is how my dispatcher described the voice of the man who made the call. Why was he speaking like a child? The only explanation that makes sense is that this man was forced to speak in that young tone of voice for so long that even when he called the station, that's the only way he could communicate.
Okay.
And if he was forced to do that, what else inside that house was he forced to do?
That was creepy, dude. That's fucking... Dude, people are terrible. Okay. Sweet. So this is going to be our ore chest.
You
Okay.
don't
Oh
want
my
your
god.
equipment to end up like this. And at Martini Works, we make sure that it doesn't. Whether you're looking for a stretch setup for your drift car or you want something like a square setup.
I've been a patrol officer for a little over 8 years now. I've worked nights for most of that time. You see a lot on midnights. For example, I've lost count at how many domestic fights, drunk drivers, break-ins, and overdoses I've had to deal with. After a while, most calls start to blend together. You show up, then separate people, you take a report, possibly make an arrest, and then move on. There are only a handful of calls that ever stuck with me. This is one of them. It happened in late October a few years back, around 2:40 in the morning. Dispatch toned me out for a 911 hang-up. The caller had reported hearing a woman screaming from inside the house next door. The address was on a quiet residential street, one that most people are familiar with, lined with single-family homes in a decent neighborhood.
That was sick.
Nothing that generated a lot of police activity. The caller said the screaming had stopped by the time she dialed 911, but she was sure that she heard someone yelling for help. I was only about 5 minutes away. When I pulled up, the street was dead silent. Most of the houses had their lights off at this time, of course. A light rain had started to fall, just enough to make the pavement shine under the streetlights. The house in question was a 2-story place with a small front porch.
Okay.
There were no lights on inside that I could see from the street. I parked a few houses down and approached on foot. As I got closer, I noticed the front door was slightly cracked open. That immediately raised my guard because it confirmed some validity to what this woman had reported. I radioed dispatch and advised I was on scene and had an open door. I asked for another unit to start my way, but at that time of night, the nearest backup was about 10 minutes out at least. I stepped onto the porch and listened. The only sound was the light rain hitting the ground. I knocked on the doorway and announced myself. Police department.
Actually,
no response. I knocked again a bit louder. At that point, with a report of screams and an open door, I had exigent circumstances. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. Nothing really stood out, such as any kind of signs of forced entry or weird smells. The living room was directly ahead of me.
Let's
Everything
see.
looked normal and neat. There were no signs of a struggle. I searched the living room first, checking behind the couch and in the corners. Then I moved toward the kitchen.
I'll make a
flashlight beam bounced off clean countertops and a sink full of dishes. There was a glass on the table with what looked like water still in it. I remember that detail because I made a mental note of it, meaning that someone had been sitting there not long ago. I called out again. Police department. If anyone is here, make yourself known. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet home. Rarely would I get nervous on a late-night call, but something about this was creeping me out. I kept expecting someone to answer from upstairs, but no one ever did. I moved down the hallway toward the back of the house. I remember the layout. There was a small bathroom on the right, a guest bedroom on the left, both clear. At the end of the hallway was a staircase leading up. As I stepped onto the first stair, I heard a sound from above, like a quick faint shuffle, like a foot dragging across carpet.
That also looks
I stopped and listened.
That there.
I drew my weapon and continued up the stairs slowly, one step at a time, keeping my light aimed ahead. The upstairs hallway had 3
That
doors.
is fast,
2 were
dude.
closed, one slightly open.
Holy shit.
The open one was at the end. As I reached the top, I heard it again. A soft movement from that direction. I announced myself a 3rd time and told whoever was inside to show their hands. No response. I approached the open doorway and pushed it wider with my foot. It was a bedroom that was larger than the one downstairs. The bed was unmade with the sheets partially hanging off the side. A lamp on the nightstand was knocked over onto the floor.
Wait, why am I blanking?
That was the first thing that looked wrong. I stepped inside and checked the closet. It was empty. And I checked under the bed. Nothing. The window was closed and locked.
Why am
No
I?
obvious way in or out from that room. I felt that uncomfortable feeling in my chest you get when something isn't adding up.
Wait.
The rest of the upstairs still needed to
Oh,
be
yeah.
cleared. The second bedroom was a kid's room from the look of it because of the toys on the floor, the small dresser, and posters on the wall. There was no one inside. The last door was the bathroom. As I reached for the handle, I noticed something on the carpet outside the door. A dark spot. At first, I thought it was just a shadow from my flashlight, then I realized it was wet. I crouched down and touched it with my glove, and it was blood. Not a huge amount, but enough to form a small pool. My heart rate went up instantly. I called it out over the radio and asked dispatch to expedite backup. People may forget police officers are people too, but when we're in these kinds of situations, we're just as scared as anyone else. I pushed the bathroom door open and flicked on the light with my elbow. The shower curtain was closed. There were streaks of blood on the tile floor leading toward the tub. I moved closer and yanked the curtain back. The tub was empty, but there was more blood near the drain. The blood looked as though someone had been standing there bleeding. I checked everywhere in the bathroom to no avail. By this time, backup was still a few minutes out. I was alone in a house with fresh blood and no victim. I did another sweep.
Hold on. Oh, my girlfriend texted me. Hold on. Come here, boy. There we go. Okay.
Sweep of the upstairs, but slower this time. That's when I heard a faint sound from below, like a floorboard creaking under weight.
Perfect.
It came from the first floor. I moved back toward the stairs and aimed my light down into the darkness. The living room was still dark, and I couldn't see movement. I felt it. That feeling like you're being watched. I descended slowly, trying to control my breathing.
I got rope,
I
didn't I?
reached the bottom. I cleared the living room again. The kitchen, too. But then I noticed something I hadn't before.
Aha.
A door near the refrigerator that I'd assumed was a pantry. It was slightly ajar now. I was almost certain it had been closed earlier. I approached it and opened it wider. It wasn't a pantry. It was a narrow set of stairs leading down into a basement. The light switch was at the top. I flicked it up, but it did nothing. Either the bulb was out or the power was cut down there. The stairs descended into complete darkness.
The 31-inch tires that came on my 7.6 Blazer were so dry rotted, I didn't even think they'd make the tire checks.
I radioed again, advising I was going into the basement. No way was I waiting up there with someone possibly moving around below me. I started down the stairs. The basement was unfinished, and as I went down, I noticed concrete floors, exposed beams, and boxes stacked along one wall. As I stepped off the last stair, I saw a chair in the middle of the room, a metal folding chair, and the floor beneath it, a large pool of blood, bigger than what I'd seen upstairs. The chair had zip ties attached to the armrests. They were cut. I scanned the rest of the basement. That's when my light hit movement in the far corner. A figure bolted behind a stack of boxes. I yelled for them to stop and started moving toward them. But they moved fast, heading toward the back of the basement where there was a small window near the ceiling. I heard glass shatter. By the time I reached that corner, the windows had broken, and whoever it was had forced themselves through. The window led to a narrow side yard between houses. I climbed out after them, cutting my hand on the glass in the process. Outside, it was still raining. I could see a dark shape sprinting toward the alley at the end of the block. I chased for a bit, but lost them once they turned the corner. Backup arrived minutes later. We set up a perimeter. K9 responded, detectives came out, but we never found the person who ran. The house turned out to belong to a man who lived alone. He wasn't there. We found his wallet upstairs and his phone on the kitchen counter. There were signs he'd been restrained in that basement chair. The blood matched him, a lot of it, but not enough to confirm he died there. He was never found. The neighbor who called 911 swore she heard a woman screaming. We never identified any female connected to that address, and no signs anyone else lived there. I don't know if I interrupted something in progress or if I walked in after it was already over. If they hadn't made that one mistake in the basement, knocking over that stack of boxes, I might have walked out of there thinking it was a false alarm. The missing man's case is still technically open. Every once in a while, I drive down that street on patrol. A new family lives in that house now. I see the kids' bikes in the driveway sometimes. Like I said,
Ooh.
it's a normal neighborhood.
Wait, that
Sometimes
spread that
tough things
fast?
happen in the most normal neighborhoods.
Oh, we gotta go. We gotta go. Oh my god. That was close. That was too close, bro.
When I was 18, I got arrested for trying to steal a phone from Walmart. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever done, and I still hate even admitting it. I was with two friends, and the whole thing started as just one of those stupid ideas. I thought I could open the packaging, slip the phone into my hoodie pocket, and walk out like nothing happened. Instead, loss prevention stopped me before I even made it to the exit. I didn't know they watched the cameras like that. Within an hour, I was sitting in the back of a police car with my hands cuffed behind me, staring at the same parking lot I had driven into like a normal person earlier that day.
That was
It was a
crazy.
Friday night, which made everything worse. I kept thinking my parents would come get me, or that I'd just get a ticket and go home. But after I was brought to the station, processed, fingerprinted, and questioned, I was told I'd be spending the weekend in county because court wasn't open until Monday. Hearing that made my stomach twist.
Let's go this way.
I still remember the feeling of helplessness. I had never been in real trouble before. I had never even been suspended from school. And now I was being walked into a local jail in handcuffs over one of the most embarrassing decisions of my life. The booking process took forever. They took everything on me, including my clothes. Then they gave me an orange jumpsuit to put on. And that's really when the gravity of the situation I got myself in became real.
Okay.
I remember changing into it and looking at myself for a second, feeling sick. When they finally brought me back to the holding area, I realized very quickly that nobody else looked like me. I don't mean that in a better than them way. I just mean I looked young, scared, and completely out of place. Some of the men in there were older, bigger, tattooed, and looked like genuinely dangerous, scary people. A lot of them were loud, acting like this was some fun place to be that they'd been 10 times before. A few of them looked at me like they were annoyed I even existed. Some guys actually made fun of me, calling me pretty boy. I tried not to react, but I could feel my face getting hot. I stared at the floor most of the time and tried to look calm, but I'm sure everyone could tell I was terrified. After a while, a fresh group of arrestees got brought into the day room, and we were all told we could make phone calls. I called my parents, and my mom answered. The sound of her voice almost made me break down. I told her where I was and what happened, and then my dad got on the phone. He wasn't screaming, which somehow made it worse. He just sounded disappointed. He told me they had already called an attorney and that I would most likely be out on bail by Monday after I saw the judge. Monday was so far away, though. I wanted to ask them to get me out sooner, but I knew there was nothing they could do. After the call, I had to go back into the day room and pretend I wasn't on the verge of panicking or crying. Later that night, they assigned me to a cell. My cellmate was a man in his 40s who told me his name was Bob. I almost didn't believe that was his name. At first, I was almost relieved because he wasn't screaming or acting aggressive like some of the others. He had a calm voice and talked to me like a normal person. He asked what I was in for, and I stupidly told him. He laughed a little and said that was nothing, that I'd be fine. For the first hour or so, he actually made me feel less alone. He told me how to deal with the routine when meals came, how to keep to myself, and not to let anyone see me looking too nervous. I remember thinking maybe I got lucky, but that feeling didn't last. As the hours dragged on, Bob got too comfortable with me. He started asking personal questions like where I lived, if I had a girlfriend, what school I went to, and if I still lived with my parents. I gave vague answers, but he kept pressing. Then he started making comments about how young I looked and how I didn't belong there. At first, it sounded like a concerned elder, but then it started sounding creepy. He would sit too close on the lower bunk with me when we talked. He touched my shoulder more than once, and once he put his hand on my knee while laughing at something he said. I moved away right away, and he he smiled like he knew exactly how uncomfortable he was making me. From then on, I dreaded every second the cell door was closed. The day room became the only place where I felt like I could breathe, even though that place was terrible too. I would wait for the doors to open just so I didn't have to be alone with him.
Alright,
The
I'm
days and
getting out
nights
of here.
blended together, and it all felt like one long day because there was no damn sunlight in that depressing place. The lights never fully went off. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like Bob was watching me. One time, in the middle of rest time, I don't even know if it was nighttime, I opened my eyes and saw him looking down from the top bunk at me. He saw me wake up and said he couldn't sleep either. I didn't answer him. Those 48 hours felt longer than any full week of my life. By the time I finally saw the judge, I was exhausted and yet excited to leave. I barely remember what was said. I just remember hearing that I was being released, and later that day my dad picked me up. When I got into his car, he wasn't angry. He was strangely sympathetic but disappointed. I didn't want to talk about jail, Bob, or anything that happened. I wanted to shower and sleep in my own bed and pretend the whole thing had just been a bad dream. A few days later, I got a follow on Instagram from a fake-looking account. My profile was public at the time, so random accounts weren't unusual. It had no real name and no posts, and the profile picture looked like a dark, blurry room. I ignored it. Later that night, I got a DM from the account. When I opened it, it was a selfie from Bob. His face was close to the camera with that same little smile he kept giving me in the cell. Under it, he had written, "Miss you already." I blocked the account immediately and threw my phone onto the bed.
Okay.
I felt violated in a way.
Oof.
He knew my real name. He found my profile,
Okay.
and I had no
That's
idea
right though.
how.
At Limelight Automotive in Webster, we install CompuStar remote starters, the highest quality on the
Whoa,
market.
what is this?
Start your car from inside. Step into warmth every morning. Plus, we back every installation with a lifetime warranty.
Wait, use
2 days later, I came home from work in the late afternoon. It was a foggy day. My parents were both still at work. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a ratty old car parked across the street. Someone was sitting inside with their head down. I sat in my car for a second, watching it.
What other stuff do they sell that's new? I didn't know we got updated.
Was concerning.
Easter
I went
block.
inside fast and locked the front door behind me. A few minutes later, while I was standing in the kitchen trying to tell myself I was being paranoid, I heard the front door knob rattle. Instead of knocking or ringing the bell, whoever was outside was turning the doorknob back and forth like they were testing if it was unlocked. Then they stopped. It was not even 30 seconds later when I heard the back doorknob do the same thing.
I'm trashing
That's
it.
when shit became real, and I called 911. As weird as that felt after spending a weekend in jail.
Okay.
I
think
whispered at first because I was afraid whoever it was would hear me.
Time
I told the operator someone was trying to get into my house.
to
While I was on the phone, the doorbell rang. The operator asked if I
get
could
a
see
fishing
who it was. I told her I was too scared to check. I told her I thought it was the man I shared a cell with in jail. She told me not to answer the door and to wait for the officers. By the time the officers arrived, the car was gone, and whoever had been at the door was gone too. I told the officers everything. I told them about the arrest, the weekend in jail, Bob, the Instagram message, and the car outside. The second I admitted I had just been in jail, I felt their attitude change. They weren't rude per se, but they didn't seem eager to help either. One of them asked if I was sure I wasn't just shaken up from the weekend, which really pissed me off. Another asked if I had given this guy my full name. I said no. They left me with a report number, and that was basically it. For the next week, nothing happened, and I tried to convince myself it was over.
How do I
Then
get
one night, I went to a dive bar with friends.
slime meal?
They weren't my friends who knew about the arrest. Outside of my family and the friends
Platinum
I
broadsword.
didn't tell anyone else. We were standing near the pool table when I looked toward the far end of the bar and saw Bob sitting alone. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled down low and a dark jacket, like the guy was freaking incognito. But I knew it was him. He wasn't looking directly at me when I first saw him, but a few seconds later, he lifted his head, and when he saw me looking at him, he smiled.
No water source.
The fear and concern in my face had to be so obvious that my friends asked what was wrong, and I told them there was a girl that I didn't want to deal with and that I wanted to leave. We left through the front. I kept expecting Bob to come out behind us. In the parking lot, I told my friends I was calling an Uber home, but to wait with me. The second I got in, I called my parents and finally told them everything I had been leaving out. That night, they put their foot down. We went straight to the precinct. This time, with my parents there and with the Instagram message still saved as a screenshot, they took it more seriously. I told them about the attempted break-in, the fake account, and seeing him at the bar.
Okay.
I signed a sworn statement, and eventually I was able to get a temporary restraining order. That was when I found out Bob wasn't even his real name. I'm not going to write his real name here. I also learned how easy it can be to find inmate and arrest information after someone gets booked. My guess is that once he got released, he searched my name through public records or some jail-related system and found enough to track me down. The restraining order seemed to work because I never saw him again after that. But for years after, this crap definitely stayed with me. Getting arrested for stealing from Walmart was humiliating, and it could have messed up my life in the obvious legal ways. But the worst part almost had nothing to do with court and the charges. It was realizing that one stupid decision put me in a locked room with someone who should have never had access to me, and then gave him just enough information to follow me back into real life.
Alrighty, let's see if I can, oh, copper. Always get some copper. So I want to do a thing. So I'm writing a book, right?
This is the first time that I'm trying to explain something by writing. I also just want to say...
Pause this. So I want to... Sir? That's bigger. Okay. So I want to... What's it called? Make a... Or I'm writing a book. Okay. I'm writing a book. And basically, I want to... I can't talk. I give up.
But I struggle to relive this memory. Whenever I start to go down the rabbit hole of potential harm that could have ensued for my friend Laura and I start to get anxious and worked up all over again. I'll start from the beginning. Last summer, I started dating a guy who lived about an hour away from me. It only lasted a few months. I'll be honest, it was a rebound. The only reason I'm mentioning him is because on this hour-long drive, I would always pass this giant building in the distance. Most of the drive was nothing but trees and massive open fields of grass. When I would be roughly 15 minutes from his house is when I would drive by that building. From the road, it looked like a building you would see in an old horror movie. He had these high arching roofs, small windows, and this giant cross on the highest point of the roof. The building fascinated me. I asked him once if he knew what the building was, and he had no idea. He said he thought it was an old prison, but truthfully had no clue. He said that for his entire life it had been abandoned, and he never cared enough to find out what it was. That's one of the many differences between him and me. I saw that building one time, and I wanted to know everything. After he and I stopped talking, I would still think about that old building sometimes. I told my friend Laura about it.
She's a little weird.
She seemed just as interested as I was. We tried looking it up online, but we couldn't find any concrete evidence for exactly what the building was used for. Honestly, we probably didn't look that hard. Neither one of us is the internet research type, and when no easy information was available, we gave up the search. However, we weren't ready to give up on the building. That's when Laura made an interesting suggestion. She suggested that we just drive out to the building and check it out. She said it's not that far after all, and if it's abandoned, nobody will be there. I was on the fence about this, not because I didn't want to, but because I don't really live on the edge. I don't take risks a lot, and potentially breaking into a building is a massive risk for someone like me. As I write this now, I feel like an idiot, but when this happened,
Alrighty.
the night seemed like a better idea. My logic was that if there was some type of security, they would for sure be gone after dark. I know it's not the best logic, but that's where my brain went.
What is all this
A few
stuff?
nights later, we made the trip at 1 in the morning. We put fresh batteries in our flashlights and got ourselves pumped up for an adventure. Laura parked the car on the side of the road. She didn't want to pull the car all the way up to the building just in case it had cameras. It took us almost 10 minutes to walk from the side of the road to the front door.
What?
When we got to the front door, I was desperately looking for a sign above or near the door. There was nothing I could see anywhere. Even with being right at the door, we still couldn't tell what the building
Neon
was.
Tetra. Let's go.
Laura walked up to the front door and tried opening it. Surprisingly, it opened right up.
Introducing Mizumo Auto, your go-to destination for reliable engine parts. Discover a wide range of engine parts, gaskets, timing kits, and complete engine.
God damn it.
There was a lock on the door, but it wasn't latched. The smell of must and old wood was overwhelming.
What is that fish?
With our flashlights on, you could see a stream of dust particles everywhere. After walking in the door, it seemed obvious what the building was. It was clearly an old prison. There was a door straight ahead that had bars on the window and a giant lock on it. This door also wasn't locked. It wasn't even closed.
Oh god.
I was starting to feel anxious about entering this place, but Laura continued forward, so I followed her. We made our way through several smaller rooms, and then eventually walked into this big room that had many cells lining the wall. The building was also littered with debris. There were chunks of the wall and ceiling all over the place. It was like the place was literally falling apart. Laura wanted to keep going.
I have not used a single piece of bait.
With all the debris everywhere, I didn't feel safe. I told Laura that the ceiling could cave in at any second. She laughed at me and called me a nervous wreck. She wasn't wrong. She promised just a little while longer. I was reluctant, but I agreed.
Alright, if I don't get anything
more than
good,
3 minutes later,
there's not fun we're moving deeper into the cave.
It stopped us both dead in our tracks. I instantly started freaking out. I couldn't help but imagine the worst.
Fast.
Laura was trying to be rational. She said something must have collapsed, and we heard the echoing. I gave her a look that said it was time to leave. Whether it was something collapsing or something worse, it was time to go. We started heading back in the direction we came from. In the doorway of the big room with the cells.
I like the fish because I can get fish stuff with it.
When Laura told me, she said not to freak out.
Alright, we're moving on.
I can't even begin to explain how unbelievably unsettling it is to be in a giant abandoned prison in the middle of the night and have a person standing 20 feet away from you. We didn't move. The person eventually put their hands up in a defensive position and spoke. He said his name was Mike, and he meant no harm. Laura started to press Mike, asking him why he's in the building and telling him that if he comes any closer, we'll pepper spray him. Mike immediately went into defense mode. He claimed that he was a security guard for the building. He said that he's supposed to detain anyone who breaks into the building and call the police to pick them up. He started going into detail about how the building started getting broken into all the time, so they needed to take measures to keep the people out.
That's bunch of
He
bullshit.
seemed confident. All his answers were smooth, and he didn't stumble over his words at all. I was freaking out at this point, thinking I was about to be detained. Laura leaned over and whispered to me that she didn't trust this guy. Mike continued walking towards us with his smooth tone. He said that he was going to escort us out of the building with a warning. Claimed that we looked like nice young women, and that there was no reason to get the law involved.
The hell?
I started thanking him. He was laughing and told me not to worry about it.
Oh.
Laura asked if he could get out of the way so we could leave, and he got a little weird. He said he was sorry, but he couldn't let us leave that way. When we pressed on why, he said that part of the ceiling caved in. There was no way through anymore. He was going to take us out the building through a much safer back route.
Nah,
Laura
bro.
was skeptical. I just wanted to leave. When he walked by us, he did look a little weird. By that, I mean he wasn't dressed how you'd imagine a security guard dressing. He was wearing jeans, white sneakers, and a black sweatshirt with a flannel on the outside.
Bro, what?
Laura even said that his outfit looked weird for security guard. He laughed, and with that confident, smooth voice, he claimed that he was able to wear whatever he wanted since this was mostly a boring job. We were walking deeper into this building, and it felt like we were going in the opposite direction of where we needed to be. Every time we asked where we were going, he would just say, "Don't worry, we're almost there." A few minutes later, we made it to this long, narrow hallway with a door at the end. The hallway was small enough that we couldn't even fit two people next to each other. He opened the door at the end of the hall. It was a long staircase down. It was dark, so dark that you couldn't even see. Instead of continuing to lead, he moved to the side of the door frame and said, "After you."
Bro.
We just looked at him. Laura asked him, why would we go down? He just laughed and said she was silly. Yes, he used the word silly. Laura put her foot down and said we weren't going any further. That's when I stepped in and asked if he could lead the way. He didn't answer for a second, but then agreed. He took 1 or 2 steps down and then said that he needed to make sure the door locked behind all of us, just in case someone broke in. So he came back up, grabbed my arm gently, and tried to guide me down first. I was not a fan of this. Laura screamed and pushed him away, which freed his grip from my arm. Because Laura still had some high ground, she was able to make him stumble with the push. She looked at me and told me to run. Laura and I ran back the way we came. A Eventually, we made it back to the room with the cells and ran through the door where we encountered Mike for the first time. We made it all the way back to the front entrance, and never once did we see any area that was caved in, as Mike had claimed. The entire time we were running, we couldn't hear anything behind us. Even though we didn't hear Mike, I felt like he was right on top of me. It was like I could still feel his touch lingering on my arm. We sprinted to the car and drove off fast. The entire long drive home, we kept checking the mirrors, making sure this guy didn't follow us somehow. It was about a week later that I contacted the police in that area. I admitted to them that I had broken into the building and that the security guard had tried getting me into a dark basement. The cop was speechless. I thought it was because I had broken into the building, but it almost seemed like he didn't care about that. He told me that the old prison doesn't have any security guards, and it isn't even patrolled or monitored by security cameras. He said that whoever we encountered that evening was not a friendly person, and my friend and I are lucky to be alive.
Oh, whoa, tree!
Those words from that cop makes me want to cry.
Oh, also,
I think one of the most upsetting things about this nightmare is we have no idea where this guy came from. He looked a little too clean cut just to be some random guy who lived in an abandoned prison.
Let's go. We found a tree.
If I think about it too much, I can almost feel his hand grab my arm again, and I start to spiral out of control. I know I'll never get answers to this horrible night. I'm just happy I'm still here, and I'm able to tell my story.
Apple AirTag horror stories. Oh, Romania. Okay, let's see. Boomstick. Damn! Alright, well. Oh well. How... It's actually not that bad of a... Oh, wait. Oh.
This happened to me back in late November of 2024.
Well, let's keep going.
I was 18. I was at the Walden Galleria Mall in Buffalo, just doing some early Christmas shopping for my family. I like to get my Christmas shopping over with. I also like going to the mall during Christmas time because of the decorations and general vibe. Okay. Something about shopping when that Christmas feeling is in the air makes it more enjoyable to me.
Okay.
I had like 3 bags with me already. I stopped in Victoria's Secret, Zara, and Sephora. I got my brother and dad something from Zara, my sister and mom stuff from Sephora.
Ooh.
I also got myself a bunch of stuff. I'd already been in the mall for hours. I wanted to just sit and collect myself. I sat on one of the benches not far from the tall tree that the mall puts up every year. There were still people in the mall, but it was closing soon, so there were less and less with each passing minute. A man came and sat down next to me. Not worth it. He cracked a joke at first, which I laughed at.
So this is right where I wanted to be able to spawn.
Like 62 or something.
Ooh.
He reminded me, honestly, of a skinny Santa Claus, ironically. We talked for a couple of minutes. The things he said that mainly stuck out to me were him talking about how he'd been coming to this mall since it opened, and how he was scared it was going to shut down.
Okay.
He said I looked like his daughter, then showed me a picture of her on his phone. I didn't see a resemblance at all, to be honest.
Whoa!
In fact, the girl looks absolutely nothing like me.
There's a summon!
For that matter. It was also a picture of a girl who looked like she was 18. He looked like he could have been her grandfather, honestly. Eventually, I felt it was time to leave.
Hell yeah! This guy's sick!
Walked away. I didn't look back to see if he was watching me. I like to avoid awkwardness in every way. I got to my car and started my drive home. I live only about 10 minutes from the mall. My family has several homes, and it's often that I'm alone with just my brother in this house. This was one of those spans of time. This night was a Thursday, I believe. My brother goes to University of Buffalo and often goes out Thursday nights.
Oh, cool.
This night was no exception. Our house is in a cul-de-sac with 2 other big houses. And when I turned right into the cul-de-sac, I looped around to our house. This cul-de-sac is unusual. It isn't one big open court. It has a circular patch of grass with some trees in the middle, so it more so resembles a roundabout. Around this time, right before pulling into the driveway, I got a message on my phone.
Okay.
It said, AirTag found moving with you. I panicked, but instead of pulling into the driveway, I looped around and drove back down the street, just in case I was being tracked. I had to make sure this AirTag was actually in or on my car. I figured out how to make the AirTag make a noise, partially expecting it to come from the outside of the car. I I heard a beeping sound coming from one of my shopping bags. I dug through the bag and pulled out an AirTag, actually feeling like throwing up. I put the car back in drive and drove further down the block, where I chucked the AirTag out the window. Then I turned around and floored it back to the house.
Okay.
I drove into the driveway.
I love
and ran
this.
inside
I love this
where I
little
opened the
fella.
garage, hoping to
I
hide the
love
car
him.
in there. But my mom's car was in there.
Clay Bud
I had no
stuff.
choice but to leave the car outside.
Someone's a Clay Bud to fight for you.
I closed
Okay,
the garage door and locked the front door.
Okay.
I called my
Let's
brother
go
Cody
venture
for
this
safe
way.
measures, just letting him know what happened.
I'm feeling
He
ballsy.
said if anyone comes to the house, call him.
Ooh,
Him
a
saying that
leaf
alone
one.
scared me, especially hearing in his tone that he wasn't kidding. But he also sounded kind of drunk. I went to the living room and tried to just take my mind off of it, but I wouldn't have written this if that's where it ended.
Increases alchemy plant collection when used together.
It was like in the back of my mind, I was dreading it, and it happened. Followed by the doorbell was 3 loud, distinct knocks.
What?
I slowly walked over to the door, like tiptoeing,
How do I gather?
and I stopped when a slightly muffled man's voice on the other side said, "Hey, actually, I think you might have my AirTag." And it all hit me instantly. It was that man from the mall. He probably purposely threw his AirTag into my Sephora bag.
We're not going in.
Home. He saw me through the textured glass.
Okay.
I guess he saw me hurrying away. I heard him yell that he promises he dropped the AirTag in there by accident. I didn't listen to a word he said.
By
Even
accident.
if he was telling the truth, the AirTag wasn't in my house, and he'd have seen that. It meant he saw me go to the house, and that's all he wanted. I called Cody again, and at first he thought I was joking. But when he heard I was serious, he said he was on his way home. The downtown bars are not far away, so I'd only have to wait maybe 10 minutes. When I peeked back at the door, I could no longer see the man through the glass. Maybe he was gone, I thought.
Get ourselves.
I went to the living room and turned on the TV to drown out the silence. I was trying not to think about the man at the door. I just waited for Cody, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I looked over, but now I didn't see anything. I sat there trying to convince myself there was nothing. Maybe the man left. Somehow, I did briefly convince myself of that, but after a minute or two of watching TV, I heard the same voice from outside that window say, "I love it when they play dumb." I looked, and he was standing right outside the window, his face pressed against the glass.
That's freaky.
He smiled when he saw me notice him. It was that old man from the mall. He lifted his hand and tapped on the window, then said, "Don't pretend you don't know I'm watching you." I called Cody and yelled into the phone that the man was at the window. He said he was almost home and told me to call 911, so I hung up and did just that. The man just kept standing there watching me, smiling like this was a game. I couldn't take it anymore, so I left the living room to the office where there were no windows. A few minutes later, I heard Cody pull into the driveway. Cody ran inside, but when we looked back at the window, the man was gone. The cop who arrived searched, but found no footprints or anything. The cop was not very familiar with the process for reporting an AirTag, but he gave me a police report number to use, and he suggested contacting Apple to start the process of tracking the owner. The next day, I tried that, but it turned out it would be a much more involved legal process than I was expecting. I simply didn't hear or see anything else for a couple of weeks. I just lost interest. Maybe the man saw my brother and cops arrived, so he bailed and didn't come back.
That's creepy, though.
To be honest, I have thought back on this, and on the girl's pictures on his phone. And I hope to God that wasn't another girl who he potentially kidnapped or worse. I truly hope that was just a random girl's picture he took off social media or something.
Probably was.
I just got a set of hand-cooked done from beef and choose from Tire Agent, and these things are amazing. At Tire Agent, you can choose from over 80 premium.
I love that they're adding new stuff still. Okay.
This experience changed me for the worse. I'm not the same person I was before it all happened, and I fear I never will be again. My name is Claire. This didn't happen so long ago that I've forgotten about it, but it's not like it happened last week either. I no longer live where this story took place, so that's why I feel comfortable talking about it now. I had just moved to a new city for a promotion at work. It wasn't anything too exciting, just your standard mid-sized city. It was a Tuesday evening when the first strange thing happened. I was driving home from work, which, mind you, is just a short 15-minute commute, and I was listening to a podcast when my phone buzzed. It was a notification I had never seen before. AirTag found moving with you. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had dropped their keys in the parking lot, or maybe it was just one of my friends playing a prank. But as soon as I opened the notification, I was horrified. The app said the AirTag had been moving with me for over an hour.
Whoa.
That meant it had been in my car the entire commute. Or worse, in the parking lot before I even got in. I checked the back seat, under the seats, in the glove compartment, and even in the trunk, but there was nothing. No AirTag, and beyond that, there was nothing unfamiliar or out of place either. I instantly knew what was going on. Someone had placed an AirTag in my car, and whoever it was knew where I went. Worse, they knew where I was. I tried to stay calm, but it was hard. Unable to find the AirTag, I had no choice but to drive home, meaning I'd be leading a potential stalker directly to my apartment, but I had no other option. Once I got home, I checked my car again, this time more thoroughly. I still couldn't find it though, despite my phone insisting it was there. The logical part of me wanted to call the police, but I hesitated. What could they do? There was no device to show them, and even if there was no direct evidence of who had placed it. I calmed myself down with some reassuring facts. My apartment had decent security, so it wasn't the end of the world if someone knew where I lived. It wasn't like I could undrive home. Whoever the AirTag belonged to already knew my location, which no police or anyone else could change, so I tried to ignore it. The next morning, I drove to work as usual. The notification popped up again when I got to work, but I ignored it. Despite my efforts, I didn't get much done that day. I couldn't stop thinking about the stupid AirTag. When I got home that evening, I decided I had to find the thing. I spent probably an hour going through my car, checking every possible hiding spot, even though I had already checked most of them the day before. Right when I was about to give up again, I ran my hand along the crack where the back seat meets the back, and my fingers hit something solid. I already knew what it was. I took the thing inside, trying to ignore how violently my hands were shaking. I ended up just taking the battery out of it because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to destroy it because it could have been used as evidence, but I didn't like the thought of it still being active. The thought that someone had been watching my every move for days, maybe weeks, made me feel exposed in a way that I had never felt before.
Whoa.
That night, while I was trying to sleep, I kept thinking about who could have planted that thing in the first place. There were a fair share of guys in my life, ex-boyfriends, friends of friends, flings, but no one who would have done something so messed up. The next evening, I came home late from work after a pretty awful day. I went to unlock my apartment door, something I had done 100 times. I froze. My apartment door was already wide open. I live alone. No one, not my parents, not any of my friends, should have been inside. I didn't go inside. That would have been a terrible decision.
Smart.
Instead, I went straight back to my car and called the police. They checked the apartment thoroughly. There was no definitive evidence of anyone ever being there. No fingerprints, no forced entry, nothing to indicate someone had actually been inside. I ended up showing them the AirTag notifications and told them everything that had been happening the past few days. The police kept asking me if I had a history of being stalked, or if I knew anyone who would do such a thing, and I didn't. The whole thing was such a nightmare. Things did die down slightly after that. My stalker had probably gotten wind of the police visit, but I ended up moving out anyway. Luckily, I don't think that person followed or tracked me to my new place, but it still gets at me that someone in my life stalked and broke into my apartment.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
The worst part, though, the thing that makes this all so scary, is that I still have no idea how they broke into my apartment in the first place. The door wasn't damaged or broken into. It was simply unlocked with a key.
That's good.
A key that no one else should have had. Fast Pro Shop's guide.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Technology with the protection you
Love it. Love to see the shine potion.
This happened a few years ago, and I want to remain as anonymous as possible while telling the story for reasons you'll soon understand. I'm from an upper middle class suburb, but that's as much information as I'm comfortable giving. The nightmare I'm about to tell you about took place over several months and led to a slew of legal issues that, at times, made me genuinely question whether my life was going to be ruined. In other words, it wasn't just stressful and scary, but truly overwhelming on a level that's difficult to capture. I don't mean that as a joke or a figure of speech. There were days where I spent hours staring at the ceiling while considering some very dark things. This all started a couple weeks after I broke up with my first serious girlfriend after college. Let's just call her Devin. I'm not going to get into it. I refuse to do that to myself. Let's just say we did not end on good terms. Despite that, I wasn't too beat up about breaking things off. She was psychotic, and I was kind of relieved to let it go. I have this friend named Zenon. Weird name, I know, but his parents have always been very wealthy, eccentric, and completely out of touch with reality. He throws parties pretty frequently at this huge property he inherited from them, which is something I still don't really understand since it's not like they passed away or anything. But that's his world, not mine. I was at one of these parties where I ran into one of my ex's friends, well, just called Taylor. Seeing her there wasn't the most surprising thing in the world. Most people in our area know Zenon, and basically everyone went to the same high schools and colleges around here. Plus, most of the people who left for college ended up coming back anyway. What was surprising was how aggressively and obviously she was coming on to me. Taylor had always talked about me to Devin while we were dating, so I found her behavior extremely strange. But my skepticism didn't last. I ultimately gave in after a few more beers. And before you jump to call me stupid, if you knew what Taylor looked like, you wouldn't blame me. The two of us ended up hooking up in one of the upstairs bedrooms. I must have been significantly more dazed than she was, because I hadn't even started getting dressed before she was already halfway out the room. As I was leaving the room myself, I realized my wallet was no longer in my pants pocket. Taylor had disappeared at that point, probably to go flirt with some other guy in the crowd. But I tried to find her anyway. After maybe 20 minutes of searching, I gave up. I ran back upstairs to the room we'd been in and searched everywhere.
This can
My
be
wallet
very
was
good.
nowhere to be found.
Not can be.
My
This
next
is very good.
instinct was to call her, but it took me all of 10 seconds to remember that I was still blocked from when Devin and I had broken up. And since there was no way I'd be unblocking Devin, you couldn't pay me to do that. I had no way of getting in contact with Taylor. Losing my wallet didn't bother me all that much, though. It was probably just the alcohol. But I decided to ignore the problem for the rest of the night, enjoy the party, and honestly relish in the fact that I'd gotten one over on my ex by hooking up with her friend. I don't remember much after that. I'm pretty sure one of my buddies ended up driving me home. The second I woke up the next morning, I instantly remembered the AirTag I kept in my wallet for situations exactly like the one from the night before. I pulled up my iPhone and saw that it was active. It was Saturday, meaning I didn't have to work, so I decided to ignore my brutal hangover and track my wallet down. The location was showing up at one of the local gyms, so I figured I'd drive over there and confront Taylor for stealing it, or determine if she had taken it by accident, or hell, if someone else entirely had found it. As soon as I stepped out of my car and started walking toward the gym entrance, the AirTag went offline, which I found strange, borderline impossible timing. The receptionist at the front desk refused to let me look around without a membership, which frustrated me more than it should have. So instead, I walked the perimeter of the building like some kind of weirdo, looking through the glass to see if I could spot Taylor inside. But I didn't see her anywhere. In fact, I didn't see anyone I recognized at all. Not Devin, not any of my friends, not some random person from Zenon's party. No one. The AirTag was still offline, so I had no choice but to just go home and bury my frustrations in whatever work I needed to get done before Monday. All my cards were already canceled at that point, so I couldn't imagine what use someone would have for an empty wallet. I kept checking its location periodically throughout the rest of the day, but it didn't come back online. Not until the next day, around noon, I saw that it was once again online, this time at some random park nearby. So I again rushed my car and drove out to its location, determined to get to the bottom of what was going on. But the exact same thing happened. As soon as I exited my car, the AirTag went offline. It was like someone was doing it deliberately to mess with me. There were a handful of people in the park, but again, no one I recognized. I was a bit more desperate this time around, so I actually started jogging around the park a little, but to no avail.
No, I would too.
As I was getting back to my car, I felt this sick feeling start bubbling up. Like I was being watched. Worse, like I was being observed.
Oh, I thought that was
When someone disabled an AirTag the moment I showed up, they must have been watching me. It was a really uncomfortable thought. There was nothing I could do about it. Looking back, that was the first time I suspected something sinister might have been going on. After I got home, I did some research and found out that whoever had my wallet was probably removing and replacing the AirTag battery to take it on and offline. It was infuriating to think that someone, probably Taylor, was toying with me like this. I had work the next day, so it wasn't like I could devote much energy to the situation. But for the next few days, the AirTag stayed offline. I decided to give up on the whole thing, refusing to give Taylor the satisfaction of watching me wander around like a lost puppy. But of course, the moment I started getting on with my life, everything hit the fan again. Only what happened next was about 1,000 times worse. I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when the sound of shattering glass jolted me awake.
Oh, shit.
It had been so long, literally years, since I had experienced true terror, that I can only describe it as suffocation. I physically couldn't breathe for about 15 seconds. It felt like someone was choking me. After finally snapping out of my haze, I called 911 and told them what was going on. Then I locked my bedroom door and listened as the person below me started tearing through the place. I wanted to go down there and confront them. I did, I swear. But I didn't have access to a weapon. I wasn't about to lose my life over some personal belongings. So I waited. But from the sound of it, the intruder was gone long before the police arrived. And they were. The police took my statement, and I gave them a catalog of everything that was missing. My laptop, my monitor, some miscellaneous electronics, and a few other things. You might be wondering why I didn't connect the break-in to the AirTag situation, which is a fair point.
Fuck!
And I did think about it.
Oh, you're kidding me. God damn it. Am I respawning? Oh. Bro!
Fast forward a few weeks. I still check the location of that AirTag from time to time, just out of curiosity. But every time I did, it was offline. That is, until one random time it wasn't. It was showing up at a decently popular bar that I'd been to a handful of times. Despite having promised myself that I wouldn't be suckered into someone else's game again, I couldn't resist. What happened when I got there really shouldn't surprise you. As soon as I was in spitting distance of the bar, this time with a hoodie on trying to be inconspicuous, the AirTag went offline. But this time, I couldn't just swallow my rage and frustration. I actually started going up to